You're concerned a little bit about the Ravens win total, right?
Yeah, we'll get into that. I like the Ravens under 11.5 wins just because, one, they stayed relatively healthy last season. Two, just in general, if you win 13 games the year before, it's pretty hard to match that the following year just with attrition, just with a bit more bad luck. The fact that they just never, ever had to play from behind last year, they just never trailed in games. So I think that the Ravens, it's going to be a more difficult season for them just because, they were the 1 seed last year, so it's probably going to get harder.
I don't know we're going to get into it, but just look at how they start this. A lot of times, we see this. We saw this 2 years ago with the Eagles, right? The year they went to the Super Bowl, is like they had such an easy schedule. I remember that was one of the reasons I talked up Jalen Hurts as my ride or die 2 years ago, because I was like, listen, you get on that easy schedule and you start believing in yourself. It really is a self-fulfilling prophecy sometimes when you get off to a hot start or you struggle. And so look at the Ravens' first 5 games at the Chiefs, all right, home to the Raiders, okay, fine. At the Cowboys, home to the Bills, at the Bengals. Then, what do they got?
Toughest game of all.
Right.
Week 6.
Then they got my Commanders in week 6, but whatever. At the Buccaneers, that's not a layup. And then they're at the Browns in week 8. If you are a Ravens fan, the only games that you feel good about in the first 8 weeks, I would argue, would be the Raiders and the Commanders.
Yep.
Again, the Buccaneers we expect to be better, but but anyway, the Buccaneers are above average, but the others are all we expect to be among the elite defenses in the NFL. And I get it, the Ravens are the Ravens and he's Lamar Jackson, but you wouldn't mind more Raiders and Commanders type games and less, Bills, Bengals, Chiefs.
Yep. The other thing too is just they finished first in the division, so they get a first place schedule. They have to play these extra games against the Bills, the Texans, and at the Bucks. Also, random little small thing, given that we have 17 games now, it's imbalanced, so there's 8 home games for the AFC teams this year, so they have an extra road game as well. So there's just a few different things working against the Ravens.
How about some more optimistic win total bets, Jay? Before we get back to some notable schedules and By-Mageddon, who are the teams you're looking at that you think that it makes sense to go over their win total?
New York Jets, Connor. 9.5 for the Jets. The over on that, I think. Just with one, we saw their schedule, how it's going to be easy early. I think that works well for them. This is still we've seen Aaron Rodgers play 4 snaps for the New York Jets. So I think that for them to build into the season playing these rookie quarterbacks, I think that will help. I think this is perhaps the most talented defense in the league on paper. And I just think the thing with Rodgers, it's not just that he's Aaron Rodgers, it's just that going from Wilson to Rodgers, from anyone resembling competence, it's just going to lift everyone up. I think the offensive line has not been as chronicled how improved that is, and I understand there are health risks with guys like Tyron Smith and AVT, but just they're going to have a better offensive line. They just have more things to throw at that.
How many games did the Jets win last year?
7.
They won 7 games, and so you're saying that they improved the offensive line, they added to the receiving core, right? They add Mike Williams, they add Malachi Corley. They don't have, last year it was Garrett Wilson, and that's it. All due respect to Alan Lazard, right? No, but seriously, but just Mike Williams needs to be healthy, and they need to get something out of Corley and everything like that. But you feel much better about the Jets' receiving core this year. You feel much better about their offensive line. You feel better about Breece Hall at this point than you did last year because you weren't sure how healthy he was going to be. And by the way, I think more importantly that even if something happens to Rodgers, and we certainly hope he stays healthy all year long, you've got Tyrod Taylor, who's a professional NFL quarterback. Like that. Last year with Zach Wilson and a brutal offensive line and only Garrett Wilson as a receiver, you guys won 7 games. You tell me you can't win 3 more games, and again, to your point, Jay, they got a 3rd-place schedule. Or a 4th-place schedule, actually, right? They've got a bad. So I love that bet. I love over the 9.5 on the Jets win total.
Yep. The other one I'll throw out there is the Detroit Lions at over 10.5, where I think that this team, I don't see any reason why they should be worse this season. This is a young group, again, playing in domes a ton, which is hugely helpful for Jared Goff. Understand it's a tough division, even though the Vikings, I think, will be a little bit worse. I think on defense, which was the weakness of the team last year, I think that's fortified. They've got these young guys like Branch, Melifonwu, Aiden Hutchinson. These guys are all going to get better. They fortified the cornerback room. I think this is just now, and it's strange to say about the Detroit Lions, but this is just a very smart, well-run organization that has made good decisions in the draft. The schedule it's not easy because they did win the division, but it's not one of the hardest schedules in the league. So I think that the Lions, I think they'll get to 11 wins.
Again, I don't think you can make enough of the fact that they only have to play 3 games out of a dome. And I will say an underrated part of the Alliance, to your point about the improved defense, also just the fact that they got Ben Johnson back.
Yeah.
Like there's so much. I mean, last year it was sort of all coming together, but the fact that Ben Johnson stayed, that Jared Goff is paid, got paid, and so I think internally you sit there and you say, okay, like, hey, Jared Goff came here. He was a question mark. He performed, and they took care of him. And in a locker room, that's huge for all the players internally. And so, like, they've all bought into Dan Campbell. They've all bought into Ben Johnson, and so I believe seeing something like that also helps the entire team. I know that seems dumb, but I'm telling you that
not dumb.
because you see there are teams that don't do that. I mean, the Commanders for years would again, don't get me started.
When you
on Bruce
change
Allen, but
regimes,
when you change
right.
regimes,
They have
or
continuity, the
or
Lions.
when continuity helps in a significant way, but more importantly, like, there are times where somebody gets expensive and they're like, oh, we're just going to franchise tag you, or we're going to let you go, we're going to let you walk. And so that does something internally in the locker room where you're just like, oh, if I get too expensive, like, they're not going to keep me. They're gonna kick me out. And like, oh, no. Like, we took care of Jared Goff. We made him one of the, I mean, you can argue whether it was the right deal or not, but they made him, one of the top 3 highest paid people on the planet Earth, right?
Yeah.
I mean, or at least within professional sports.
Yeah.
I mean, like in the NFL.
On offense as well, like, I think they can get better on offense. They brought back effectively their offensive line, 80% of it. I don't think they're going to get worse there. Jameson Williams should get better. Sam Laporta will get better. Also, by the way, Jared Goff's only 29. I think Jared Goff can get better as well, and he was excellent last season. And just with him in a dome, like, Jared Goff in a dome is like Dak Prescott, and then outside of a dome, he's like not Zach Wilson, but closer to that.
Yeah.
And so getting 14 games of Dak Prescott as your quarterback is pretty good. So I think that the Lions, I think they're going to be in the mix for the 1 seed. I think they're going to be a story of the season.
And more usage out of the gate for Jahmyr Gibbs, right? Like, they kind of kept training wheels on him a little bit out of the gate last season, and this year it's going to be like, well, good luck stopping all of this now.
By the way, they make their NFL debut Sunday night on NBC. They play the Rams week 1. That'll be a great game.
Yep. Great playoff game.
Again, I'm a company man, but real talk for a second. Like, we got Chiefs Ravens Thursday to open the season.
Take a look at the Sunday night football schedule because it is phenomenal.
Look at this. This is like legit, right? So we open up Ravens at Chiefs, the AFC Championship title match. Very next night, we got Friday Night Football from Brazil.
You going? Rio?
Sure. They told me that there's going to be a live fantasy football happy hour from Brazil.
Matthew Dino?
Oh, listen, they love Dollaritas in Brazil too. Make no mistake about that. Packers, Eagles, so Jordan Love versus Jalen Hurts. That's 2 great NFC teams. It's going to be a lot of fun. And then a playoff rematch in week 1 on Sunday night. Rams at the Lions. Matthew Stafford and Jared Goff once again facing their former teams, face-off there. That'll be a lot of fun. Matthew Stafford's return once again to Detroit.
If you're going to choose the worst game, it would probably be Bengals against my Giants. And you still get Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase in primetime there.
Right, which is must-watch.
The resurgent New York Giants on their way to 6-11.
Speaking of which, did you see the Giants'
but
new
honestly,
throwbacks they released today?
Spider-Man?
Yeah. Yes, perfect.
Yeah.
Dreadful.
Honestly, and from an NBC perspective, like, I don't want to speak for the executives here. They're thrilled. Joe Burrow against New York. Yeah. It's the New York market. It's the New York television
Giants
market.
fan base is massive.
Giants fan base will be massive. Like, that'll do that game, regardless of the quote competitiveness of it. That game will do a massive number.
Yeah, and if that's the quote unquote worst game on the schedule, you're doing pretty well.
No, we have a ridiculous schedule. Hey, it's Matthew Berry from NBCSports.com and RotorWorld.com, and I want to thank you so much for watching whatever it is you just watched, or if nothing else, being too lazy to click out of the autoplay after this video started, after whatever it is you actually wanted to watch finished. But now that you're here, I'd like to take a moment here to ask you respectfully now, okay? I'm asking you respectfully to subscribe to the NFL on NBC YouTube channel. You'll get the latest Roto-World fantasy news headlines, all sorts of great shows, including my own Fantasy Football Happy Hour. So go subscribe now. Again, I'm asking respectfully.